Hi there, welcome to the Quantum Leap podcast. Today we have with us Colleen Foy, who played the maid Magda in O Ye of Little Faith. Colleen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So we're really excited to talk more about your experiences on O Ye of Little Faith. But perhaps first you could tell us a little bit about your background, tell us about what got you into the business, any highlights in your career, any anecdotes you want to share with us about American Sign Language with offensive gestures. Anything you want to tell us about that?
Yes, yeah, the burning question.
Just to throw that one in there. I love
it. Well, I'm from Wisconsin originally. I did theater in high school, and I made it my major in college. And while I was in college, I learned sign language because I did a play that was written by a deaf man who happened to be a very good friend of mine. And he wanted it to be performed completely in sign language because oftentimes when a deaf audience member is watching the action on stage and then they're looking at an interpreter, there's something lost there. There's something lost. So he wanted this, it's going to be completely performed in sign language. We'll have it voiced by two actors off stage. So, and he wrote it. So I had to learn my lines to put it up. And it was his senior thesis. And then the head of the theater department said, this is great. We're going to enter it into a competition. And so we entered it into what's called the American College Theater Festival. And we went to sort of like local, regional, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we won the competition and we went to the Kennedy Center in DC and performed it there. So, so my first job out of college was then working for the National Theater of the Deaf. I had that basis of sign language by that point. And I had a blast touring for a year with a theater company. I played Alice in Alice in Wonderland. And when Alice falls down the rabbit hole, in Wonderland, she talks with her hands and speaks at the same time. So it was a little bit of an opportunity to put a twist on Alice in Wonderland. And I had a blast doing that. Then relocated to Los Angeles and I needed sign language for the very first film I did too, which was There Will Be Blood, which I got as an unsigned actor. I couldn't get an agent or a manager to save my life out in Los Angeles. I sort of was, just couldn't get arrested, man. So I heard that they needed a blonde hearing actor who knows sign language about my age. So I sent in my headshot and resume. And my friend said, send it to 5555 Melrose. And I said, okay, I'll send it to 5555 Melrose. Turns out that's Paramount Studios. So I was sending it to Paramount. I was just like 5555. Maybe I could just drop it off. It's like down the street. Had no idea I was sending it to Paramount. But after 3 months of waiting to hear from them, I ended up booking that movie. And then slowly after that, I started to get a little work. But the sign language that I use in There Will Be Blood and touring with the National Theater of the Deaf was certainly not the sign language that I used in Tacoma FD, which was a total blast and so much fun. And I kind of couldn't believe how much humor we could sort of squeeze out of this moment. And working with the cast of that show was really just like it was kind of like a pinch me moment. I couldn't believe I was there and making funny with them and also making them laugh. And I felt so good. And that remains something that people talk to me often about, Tacoma FD. So that's a little bit about my background in a nutshell. In the years that I've been here in Los Angeles, I started teaching audition technique. So for the last 12 and a half years, I've been teaching through a studio, and I'm now the director of the studio. So that has been like a very nice constant in my life, because this business is so up and down, and so much of it is out of your control. So waiting around can feel so stressful. So having my students, having a community has been kind of vital.
Yeah, I guess particularly in the last couple of years with everything moving towards virtual tapings and everything that's been happening in that community must be Must be vital. Yeah.
Absolutely vital. Well, what was wonderful is at our studio, we've always done on-camera audition technique. So we would sort of simulate an audition experience where we had a room that was sort of kept nondescript, not cozy, a little bit like an austere casting room. Uh, and so one by one, we used to, this was pre-pandemic, have actors go there. You get in, they say, okay, great, 3, 2, on 1 you hear the beep and you start your audition. So we have always looked at auditioning on camera as a skill set that we've been building. So when the pandemic hit and everything was self-tapes and doing Zoom auditions, I did feel like we were several steps ahead, but the technical aspects of like lighting and figuring out your camera and a little bit of sound, that was challenging because that's not necessarily intuitive for me. Neither is Zoom. I mean, I remember getting on Zoom and being like, how do I operate this? I don't like what buttons do I push? I don't know this platform at all. So, but luckily we had the artistry of mastering an on camera self tape. We always have a little bit of an eye towards, can you be a little bit of the cinematographer? You know, at the end of the scene, typically on in TV shows or in films, at the end of the scene, there's a close up, right? There's like, it's going to start with a little bit of a wide shot establishing this is the office. We see the desk, we see the door, she's coming in. And by the very end, it's a nice tight close up. So can we sort of choreograph it where you start to seem a little further back, and then in the end, you take a step forward towards camera and you give yourself a little bit of that close up. So that's been part of our vernacular for a very long time. And I feel so grateful to have had that training, and then to be able to teach it to other folks. Yeah, because auditioning and acting are so dissimilar in so many ways. Yeah, I could go on and on. You guys might have to like rein me in a little bit.
No, this is fascinating. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, yeah, could you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the show?
Sure.
Your experience there?
Sure. Well, I was aware of Quantum Leap because I'm friends with Ray Lee. I'm friends with Ray, who plays Ben. He's actually part of my acting studio. He's part of the community. So I met him. I think he started class. He came to us, I think maybe in January, February of 2011. So I've known him for a long time, you know, but pre-Quantum Leap, pre-Tom Cruise. So I was aware of the show and had read it and was just so stoked that he booked it. And I also taught the script to my students, you know, taking a look at it. And the pilot episode changed quite a bit, as you guys already know, but was really sort of fascinated by all of it. And I know a script is pretty special when I'm reading it and boom, I see it in my head, especially pretty special when I can see it in my head, but it's time travel. And I haven't conceptualized that a lot before in my life. So I thought it was a special script. And then I just got an audition sort of out of nowhere as they come. And it was over Labor Day weekend. So I had to film over the long weekend. And it was a particularly hot weekend, like 106 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm sorry, I don't know the Celsius translation, but just so hot and so like a vacation weekend. But I was like, I'm gonna put my everything into this. And I didn't tell Ray, I didn't contact Ray until I officially got the word that I had booked it. And I always know that the gig is real when wardrobe calls. Because it's all just sort of like the agent telling you this, and yes, they like you and they want you, and this is it. But when wardrobe calls and says, let's schedule you for a wardrobe fitting, I always feel like, it's said and done. Now that wardrobe wants to fit me. Yeah, it's real. It's real. Yeah, I had such a blast even working on the audition script because I could feel this who done it. It's almost like an episode of Clue. You know, was it the uncle? It turns out to be the uncle with the poison in the secret closet. But is it the maid? Is it the grandma? Is it the dad? Is it mom? Is it, you know, what is going on here? Or is it a demon? So I was immediately sort of hooked into the whodunit of it all, and I thought it was pretty fun. And my grandmother, my mom's mom, my maternal grandmother, who I look quite a lot like when she was my age. She was a live-in maid. She was a domestic. So I felt a lot of kinship because the character was a live-in maid for this family, and my grandmother did that very same work. She went up to 8th grade, and then after that, she went and stayed with the family for the week, earned money, and then on the weekends came back and was with her family. That was just sort of what was done in the time. So I felt like a very strong kinship immediately to the character. Yeah.
That might start to lead into something I was interested in, because you were talking earlier about your approach to auditions, and it's clear that you're someone that puts a lot of thought into the whole process. Mm-hmm. I'm really interested. Magda is somebody that is there to do a lot of reacting, a lot of telling the audience how to feel about the characters around her. She's also there as a kind of a pseudo Addison. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff that she does against Ray as soon as Addison's out of the mm-hmm. picture, but without actually that many lines. Right. She's always there, but there's not that much material. How do you prepare for a role?
Ooh, that's such a good question. And it's so lovely that you picked up on that, because sometimes, you know, as we're sort of doing it, wondering, is my work in, you know, just for me? Is it just sort of like what the actor will enjoy doing and no one will sort of notice it? But the very first 2 days, so I shot for, I think, 7 days on this. The very first 2 days, I had no lines whatsoever. So they didn't even need to put a microphone on me. So it really does. So I love talking about this stuff. So part of how I operate with that is because we shoot in non-chronological order, I wanted to make sure that I was very clear as to what has happened thus far. So I think the very first thing we shot may have been Daisy's birthday. So at that point, I wasn't suspicious of anyone. I was just like, whoa, toxic family here. Just trying to like be seen, but not noticed. I got the cup of tea for her if she needs it, but just sort of like, oh, like just noting everything, but keeping it together, just keeping it together. And then like right away, we would shoot something that happened towards the end of the episode. So I had to be very clear as to chronologically what has happened thus far. Do I know yet about the Jimson weed? Have we brought Daisy into our plan? Sort of understanding that. And then what I find most challenging about that, Matt, is I want to make sure that since it's all facial expressions from me, that I'm not overacting. I'm not sort of showing all the facial expressions, but they're needed. So it's like finding that middle ground. And I think I tend towards overacting. Like I tend to like, if it's a shock moment. So I have to like kind of be constantly rating myself back and be when people say a little grounded, I'm like, that's how I react in real life, you know, my pretty expressive face. And part of that is because in sign language, you use your face to tell a story. So I'm it's sort of ingrained in me. But I really, for those moment to moments when it's like, we're mourning days and we're very sad, I always think like character thoughts. What is the character thinking? Just so sad that Daisy is gone. And then she rises. What is happening here? So I really sort of play in that moment what I call the new truth. The new truth is not sort of I'm not playing like, I know this is going on, but I'm secretly poisoned. I know that she was secretly poisoned, but we're pretending this thing rather than layers and layers. It's just like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? And then a flicker of like, are they catching on to this thing? And then she says that someone has hurt her. It's you. Are you catching this, Father? You know, sort of having very clear thoughts for each of these moments rather than playing like, now I'm surprised, now I'm angry. Having a very clear thought helps me so much. And you're shooting those scenes for a long time. Oh my gosh, because you have to get sort of everyone's coverage. And then you're pushing in with different cameras. So having a clear understanding ahead of time rather than like, oh, well, it's hour 8 of shooting this scene. I'm curious what my emotions might be this time. I want to make sure that everything cuts together editing wise. So having clarity before I even step into that scene is pretty important to me. Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but like after I have lunch, I feel a little sleepier. My reactions might be a little,
Hmm.
a little like getting into like, I want to take a carb nap. But Magda, the character, hasn't done that. It's the same thing, except now the camera's on me and I can't sort of not have the same expressions. So yeah, thinking about all that stuff, more about like a holistic approach. Yeah.
Uh, when acting in a whodunit, is there a certain like thought that is in your head or an acting technique for at the same time being able to portray like guilt and innocence at the same time for the audience that's watching and thinks maybe your character did it or maybe they didn't, and have it apply to both?
Right.
Is that
Ooh. Yeah. Oh, actually a great question, because it's almost like I'm looking at it from two points of view. One, as the character's point of view, we need to help this girl. I think she's possessed by a demon, and at the same time, me, Colleen, I'm thinking, I know what this moment needs to be for the audience. I know what it needs to be, especially that moment where the very first moment of our episode when Ray comes to the door. And as I close the door, I sort of look, 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 look. And part of that is to hook the audience to watch us at the end of episode 6, to hook them so that they show up for episode 107, our episode. So in that look, there has to be a couple things. I have to make sure that the audience is going, wait, what is going on here? I'm wondering what this maid is thinking about. Who is she looking for? Why is she concerned? What is going on here? That has to happen. So again, thankfully for me, that couldn't be a very subtle moment, because I'm not great at the subtlety. That couldn't be a subtle moment, right? If I'm just there and I'm like, containing all my emotion, but it's no big deal, the audience isn't going to understand that. So a lot of times our body language, whether that's sort of how we're hunching our shoulders or sort of puffing up our chest, or sort of bowing our heads. A lot of time Magda's head was bowed, sort of subservient. And also like the way we're looking, it's almost like we're helping score the episode of TV. Like instead of violence, we're seeing people darting eyes and darting eyes and darting eyes. So understanding how we can perhaps with our instrument collaborate into the whodunit, I think it's very important. I always think about that stuff, Albie. I'm always thinking about what is my function in this whodunit, and creating a little bit of that red herring. No pun intended with that fish under the bed. But we have to create, for the audience to not know who it is straight away, there has to be sort of looks or behaviors that feel like perhaps this is the person. I love that line when Ray, when the doctor and the priest are talking, and they say, we have to find out who put the fish under the bed. And I say, that would be me. For a moment, that would be me. I put it underneath there because I wanted her to suffer and blah, 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 blah. So just for a moment, we think, oh gosh. And then bam, we're in Magda's room. And I'm saying, look, I was protecting her. These are all my potions. These are the things that I was doing. And trust me, that fish was for her benefit. But if I just came in and said, that would be me. That would be me. I'm the one who put the fish. That ruins the moment. And that was one of my audition sides, was that would be me. Dun, dun. So I kind of wanted to play up that moment. I'm glad that you asked about that. Yeah. Yeah.
It being a horror themed episode, was there any thing that was out of the ordinary for shoot? Because like I noticed, like the fish, the lighting, the mystery of it all, the bloody eyes, was that like CG? Did you have to do extra work for that shot to make sure it worked out?
The bloody eyes. No, that was all, yes, computer generated. How crazy. And at the moment it was scripted because he is drugged at that point with the Jimson weed. And when he looks up, he sees the blood. And the writer was fighting for that moment. We need that because sometimes you get crunched for time. And then if we go and do sort of adding blood, do we like then we're shooting another scene afterwards. We have to take it off. We sort of lose time, lose money. And she was like, we need that moment because it's really important for Ben to see that, feel like he's losing his mind, and it spirals him even more. That's why he scatters away, scurries away, and then the demon pops up. And the director said, look, we'll do it in post because we got to keep moving. We got to keep moving. And so in that moment, I wanted, when I came into that moment, I wanted to be sort of as still as possible so that the focus could be on the blood. Because if I come in and I say, Father, are you all right? And I'm sort of looking him up and down. Obviously, you can tell I'm not very subtle. Father, are you all right? And I'm looking up and down and I'm shaking my head. It's going to distract from the main thing, which is the blood coming from the eyes, which is so cool. And then also there's another horror aspect with the sort of atmosphere that I wish I knew better what they call it, but sort of like it was kind of smoke filled, hazy all the time, which is kind of hard to breathe in that. Elise and I were both just like coughing, and I started to lose my voice a little bit one day because of that atmosphere that they're pumping in there. It's also, I mean, this is like the non-glamorous stuff, but my eyes were hurting. I had to take backup contact lenses and contact solution just because it really has an effect on. It really affected me physically quite a lot. So that aspect was pretty interesting. And then I loved seeing the actual episode because the way that they played with all those. With the demon and her scurrying and the computer generated, and even Addison sort of like fritzing out, I just thought they did such a fantastic job. I haven't done a lot of TV or film with a lot of special effects. It's mostly, I've done a lot of the emotions are the special effects. There's sadness and trauma and overcoming. So to be a part of something and be like, oh, that's so cool. Like that actually wasn't what it looked like on the day we shot it. It just I felt such glee. I felt such joy. I felt like a kid getting a wish come true. It was awesome. And I think the director and the DP were just like so dialed into what needed to happen. Oh my gosh. As soon as they would sort of say, this is what the next shot is going to be, boom, people are moving lights. People are pumping in the atmosphere. People are turning on the AC so we can just cool down a little bit. People are moving the bed. People are cleaning up blood. People are bringing in a fresh fish, as fresh as a dead fish can be, right? So, yeah, it was just awesome to see how they all work together to accomplish the vibe of a horror film done in network TV. So cool.
Wait, that was a real fish? Sorry,
that's
my takeaway from everything you just said.
It was a real fish. And I couldn't believe it because they had a fake fish and that was wrapped up in the paper, and that's pretty typical. There's a lot of fake things everywhere in TV and filmmaking. You know, if you go to like one of my characters on a different show, I opened up the fridge and it's just fake, empty, you know, everything's smoke and mirrors. But they brought in a real fish for the actual take, and the maggots was risotto. They had cooked some risotto so that it looked like maggots. And luckily they had been storing it properly, so it didn't, right? So it didn't smell awful. It was a non-smelly fish. But there's a lot of takes on the cutting room floor where Ray would be saying his lines and then he'd be mid-line. He was just playing for the camera. Everyone was cracking up. I really was curious if they were going to use any of it, but I think it perhaps took away from the stakes of the moment. But it was a whole amazing take where Ben's song is in every single line. It's pretty funny. Yeah, real fish. How crazy.
Just talking about that moment with Ray, I imagine it's quite hard to keep that tension going that much for an 8-day shoot, is it?
Yes.
Without some levity on set as well.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the hard thing about adding levity in is that we don't want to take away from the work. It's great to have levity, but if you ruin someone's shot and they've just spent an hour and a half lighting it perfectly, or this is the last cake that Props has, or Daisy has her contacts in, which were very hard to see with. If you're hurting anyone or delaying their process, then it's not fun to have that levity. It kind of works against you. I think Ray does such a fantastic job of knowing when it's appropriate, and he kind of sets the tone of everything. I always feel like the lead, or what I call the number one on the call sheet, they set the tone for everything. So when I worked on Castle, it's Nathan Fillion. When I worked on 911 Lone Star, it's Rob Lowe. They really set the tone for everything, and how well things go, or how stressful they will be. And I think Ray set the tone gorgeously. There was a moment at the very end when it's revealed that Daisy had just been poisoned, and her mom and her uncle are carted off. And at the very end, Charles, Daisy's father, embraces her. And there was a take where Ray gave it a beat, and then he let himself in on the hug. So it was a triple hug right there. But he knows that he gave it a beat so that the camera got the moment. They can cut, and then he goes in for the hug. So it's not disrespectful to any cast or crew members. I think that's so important. But you're right. If it's just horror movies and it's the demon father, it's the demon for 8 days straight, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to get through. But luckily, it was just like the loveliest. I listened to your interview with Elise, and she's right. It was just the loveliest set. So fantastic. Yeah.
I find it really interesting that you knew Ray before you filmed this episode. That really informs my memory of it. I just watched it again today, 5th, 6th time. I don't even know. But when you were his like impromptu companion in this episode, when he didn't have his normal hologram, did your past relationship with him like help that in the characters? Because you're not supposed to know each other, of course, before in the episode, but like working together, what was that like working with Ray, having known him before and doing those scenes together, like when you were teamed up for that section of the episode?
Yeah, well, I tell you, I felt so secure doing it. I think a lot of times actors can get pretty self-obsessed. Am I doing okay? No one's patting me on the back after every take. Am I doing all right? And I actually feel like I don't do a lot of that. I feel pretty secure in what I do. But with Ray, I just felt held when you're looking at someone in the scene, and you know that they're not just waiting for their line. They're not just waiting for their cue. He's actually listening, and I can see him processing what I'm saying. So that when I'm speaking to him and he's processing, and then he's speaking back to me, I can then process how he is saying it and then respond to him. And it almost feels a little, this is going to sound so woo-woo and so actory, but a little like an out-of-body experience where you're just sort of being taken on this ride. Or actually, I'm going to use a different analogy because that is maybe a little too woo-woo, but like a surfer catching a wave. And again, guys, I've never surfed. So I'm using this analogy without actually knowing it, but I feel like you're in the water, and then whoo, you catch the wave and you're just being taken. I felt so secure in working with him because there was, I think, an underlying trust there. You don't always get that when you show up to set and you're like, I don't know this person at all, and suddenly we have to solve a crime together, and I care about this young girl. But I felt like because we had that rapport, it just felt so good and like second nature. And also, because we're from the same training, we have the same training, I felt so confident. Oftentimes, I think what I'm not saying is I've had experiences where the other actor isn't giving me anything. Unless the camera is on them, they're not giving me anything. In fact, I've even had experience where I'm doing the scene with the actor's stand-in, and their lines are being yelled to me from off camera. And it feels like you're out, like on your own, out on a limb. No one's got you. There's no security. And that's, I think, when a lot of the insecurities pop up. However, Ray was completely present for every single moment, even when the camera was not on him. It was capturing me. He set me up as a beautiful scene partner. And then, if you don't mind, Albie, I know this wasn't quite your question, but the very first, or I'm sorry, not the very first. One of the days when we were shooting was the day that the Quantum Leap premiered on TV. So during our lunch break, they screened the first episode for us. So everyone stopped what they were doing. They had a whole empty sound stage, which is huge, and they had screens set up, and I got to sit next to Ray while he was watching the first episode for the very first time. And that felt so special and emotional, and I just felt so grateful. If my footage didn't look as good as I think it does, if they didn't cut away to me, that's fine. To have that moment with a friend felt, I wish I had a better word, felt like such a gift. And I've known him for so long that I've seen all the hard work that he's put in. He was on a show, it got canceled. He did this thing, it didn't quite work out. So to see the actual fruition of all of the work that he's put in, to sit next to him and watch his name come up first on the screen, it just made me so emotional. Even thinking about it now, I get a little emotional because he's a good person. There's a lot of people who get their dreams come true in Los Angeles, and they've hurt people along the way, and they've been disrespectful, and they don't look out for others, and they don't know the names of anyone on set. And I'm happy for them, but it feels different when it's someone who is kind and takes time. He knows everyone's name on set, every single person, and that's a rarity. It really is. So yeah, how awesome, right? Yeah.
Wow. How was that screening? Was everybody that was watching it, cast and crew and production people, were they all laughing at the right parts and enjoying it, or what was that like?
Yes. Although we all had to be masked, so it was. So I think there was a little bit of like laughter and the oohing and ahhing was a little bit muffled because everyone had their masks on and we all had to be socially distanced. Mm-hmm. So it was like kind of like an airport hangar, but you're a little bit distanced. You all have a mask on. So yes, but also it would have been different. So I think in let's say I'm sitting next to my sister watching her daughter in a ballet recital, and the music's loud, but I have my mask on. I want her to know that I love what her daughter, my niece, is doing. So instead of going, I would. Make sure that she can hear and that she sort of sees it. So it was the same thing when watching with Ray. There's a moment like give him a little bit of a smack, like, that's you, look how cool that is. Because there's some really cool action stuff and a lot of fantastic moments. And he's so good at adding comedic moments in, but they're really nice and subtle and clever. And I wanted to know, like, that was amazing. That was so good. And also, the showrunners were there and the creators and everyone. So had we been in a smaller quarters without masks, it would have been like rip roaring. How it happened was a little bit more contained, but like, whoa, to see it all come together was pretty spectacular. Yeah.
We got an opportunity to see a cast photo of everyone from this episode, and I had a question. There's a little mystery of do you know the actress's name who played the shadow, the demon for the background
Haley.
shots?
Yeah.
Haley.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can also give you her last name too if you want. I don't remember that off the top of my head, but yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful.
That would be amazing because then Matt could get in contact with her so we could find out more about that. So,
Ooh.
it's just been a mystery for the longest time, but now we know. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
She was good. Oh, she was awesome. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, what was it like, the whole group, the whole filming, like with all the other actors? Was it like one of those instant family kind of things for the 3 days or 7 days?
It was. And I know that sounds super cliche, but it was because, well, for a couple of reasons. One, we're all just thrilled to be employed, right? We're all just like
Mhm.
thrilled to be working. A paycheck is coming, and also because we were all together kind of all the time. Margarita Matthews, who wrote the episode, I said to her, "How did you come up with this? Where did this come from?" And she said, "Well, I was tasked with writing an episode that takes place in one location." So, okay, great, a house. So we have to sort of fill it with characters because we can't have a ton of people coming in and coming out. We had the constable, we had the doctor, but otherwise it's sort of a family situation. So because all of us were all together, we spent a lot of time together. And because of COVID restrictions, we had to be sort of sequestered in like a makeshift tent. So there was just a lot of a lot of chit chat, and actors want to talk actor stuff. So so a little bit of, I always want to know what people's auditions are like because I teach auditioning. Like, what's your audition like? How did you approach it? What was the scenes like? Turns out Elise and I have so many friends in common. Shane and I have a few things in common. Carrie is just the sweetest human in the world. And then Amanda, who played Great Aunt Tessa, was a hoot. Oh my gosh, she was a hoot. I was so sad when she was dead and gone. Because to have her around, I was just like, I I called her the ghost of Christmas Future because that's what I want to be. I want to be Amanda when I grow up. Everyone was just so lovely and so much fun. Yeah.
A couple other silly questions. Like the gag of the 669 turning into 666. Was that was there a guy in a ladder with a stick or a string or something? Can you talk
Yes,
about the
there
silly things that we
was.
wouldn't? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yes. Well, I love talking about the silly things because in the
Hmm.
moment I was like, this is so wild. And if anyone saw like the behind the scenes of it, we're not allowed to take any photos or any sort of behind the scenes stuff. And I wanted to be very respectful, but at the same time I was like, yo, someone has to capture this because it's so cool. So they literally had it's like a dowel going all the way through, and they would turn it, and they wanted when it turned, when the nine turned to a six, they wanted it to sort of like wiggle a little bit before it came to a still. So it was about getting the timing right of all of that, and they wanted it to be within one shot. Of course, they could have cut from Magda looking concerned, cut right up, but I think it speaks to the sort of desire of the filmmakers. We want to get this in one cut. Hello, Kitty. So we want to have it all done at the same time. So yes, someone on a ladder moving a dowel. And of course, you're letting him into the house and paying no attention to the man on the ladder with the dowel, moving the numbers. It's so fun, like what's going on behind the scenes. Yes, that was awesome. A practical thing. Yeah.
Very cool. See, now we know. You just wonder about those things when you're watching for the fifth time or
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
The soup, was it like prop soup? Was it real soup?
It was prop soup. It was prop soup,
Okay.
and he would always sort of bring it out to me. They didn't want it to spill, so whenever a take was over and they were setting up something, comes and like takes the little tray out of my hands and it disappears, and then when we go to shoot again, it just sort of reappears in my hands. So it was like a vegetable soup, and there were times when it was warmed up, so it had a little bit of like a lovely tomatoey smell. Yeah, yeah. How interesting, right?
Very
Yeah.
cool. Very cool. Very cool.
So real fish prop soup.
Real? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. That's right.
Our money was on rubber fish, but I think it was the risotto that fooled us. So that's
It's
interesting
the
to know.
risotto.
I'm glad
Yeah,
they didn't
the
do real
maggot
maggots. That
risotto.
always like turns me off. Yeah, when I see that on
Oh
screen.
my gosh. Oh yes. If they had like moved or like crawled, it would have been so icky. Yeah. Oh, gross.
There was your character had like a Jewish mysticism kind of thing going on. Was there anybody on set to instruct you about that, or was it just like you had to do your own research, or just go with what was on the page more?
Yeah, it was mostly the latter two. Go with what's on the page and let that dictate the research that I did, um, and uh, and really not necessarily bring a lot of my own ideas to it. Just let it be what it is. And then, although there wasn't necessarily an expert on that kind of mysticism on set, Margarita had done her homework. She really had,
Mm.
and Chris, the director, was very useful in guiding us through all of it. Um, and really, what it was is playing to Magda's strength of it's a demon. I tell you, this is what is going on. And then, oh man, I wish I could show you a picture of all the amazing things in Magda's room, but they decorated it impeccably. Oh, it was so incredible with dried flowers and herbs, and everything was labeled, and it was so gorgeous. It was incredible, really incredible. I think that's stuff that you won't necessarily see, but you see it sort of in our performance because I don't have to sort of go like
Mm.
I'm a woman who believes in mysticism, right? But because I'm surrounded by all of it, I just sit on the edge of my bed and say it was the Dybbuk, and this is why I did it. Their work gives us a little bit more confidence, a little bit of a foundation, so that we don't have to push anything. It's kind of right there. Yeah.
Awesome. My last question about this episode is what will be your biggest takeaway from the whole filming experience of filming O Ye of Little Faith?
Ooh, that is a really good question. Well, the takeaway that I've been talking about most with my students is I love an ensemble. I really love working with an ensemble. Um, it Getting to play with other actors is one of the greatest joys I have as an actor. Not necessarily creating a character or learning this whole new sort of legal jargon or presenting as this kind of mom. I get joy from that, but working with other actors is it. This really sort of filled my tank as far as those experiences. Um, I just loved watching Shane, Elise, Josh, Carrie blew me away. Amanda, Caitlin when she was there, Cheeto when he was there, and then Ray. Just being able to watch and listen and see what they do, it fills me with a kind of joy that I think I had been missing out on in a lot of the work that I do, TV and film work that I do. I really missed that ensemble feel. It it was just wonderful. Yeah. I think that'll be the lasting thing uh for me. Yeah.
Um, Colleen, you've been super generous with your time. I just wonder if we could wrap up by talking a little bit about the future. One thing, and this is just an observation, the way that you talk about your interaction with the other actors and your joy at observing and working with actors, is there a future in directing for you? Because the way you talk about this, you sound like one of those, to me anyway, one of those kind of actor directors that really gets it and gives actors the chance to play and do what they do best. Is that something that you've ever considered?
Well, it's something that people keep bringing up to me, similar to what just happened. People will say, I think you have an eye for this, or you have an ear for this." And I do spend a lot of my time because I teach and coach actors specifically on auditions. I try and think a lot from the director's standpoint and also from the producer's standpoint. If we are looking to have a whodunit episode, great. You're great. We're invited to a murder mystery party. Are we the sleuth? Are we the assistant sleuth? Are we the red herring? Are we the villain who seems completely innocent at the very beginning? I think a lot like that, and people have brought it to my attention a lot. I don't I don't know. I don't know. Perhaps I had the opportunity earlier this year to be the on-set coach for a TV show, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that, and we'll see. I guess where that sort of takes me but I also love to be directed. I love to be to have someone suggest something to me. For example, when Magda's in her room and saying, I planted the fish and this is why I did it. Chris encouraged me to do. I was coming at it very much from like I believe in what I did and I'm proud of it. Chris suggested I do a take where it's sort of like I'm sorry that I haven't come clean before. I planted the fish and this is why I did it. I love having a suggestion come my way and being able to run with it. So as much as I may have a bit of a directing eye or a heart for it, I also really love being directed. Yeah, but I really appreciate that, Matt. I received that. That's really lovely to say. Thank you.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you do have coming up then?
Sure.
You got any shows or films that are in production at the moment?
Yeah. So I did a film last year called The Mattachini Family, and it's I just saw a cut of it, and it had me in tears very quickly, very quickly in the movie. It's a very touching film, and it's done by two lovely gentlemen, Danny and Andy Valentine, and one wrote, one directed, and they were so masterful with what they did. So we're hoping to hear soon about some festivals in 2023, and also a short film that I did. Oh boy, pre-pandemic. It's called The Green Cobra. We got a lot of festival love, but it happened during the early part of the pandemic. So our cinematographer just won a really big award from the Cinematographers Guild. So we're thinking about turning that into a feature. And while we're still sort of being shown in festivals and things like that, there's a hope to turn it into a film. And I play the Green Cobra. I play a young woman who's a little disillusioned with life and capitalism, so she becomes a hit woman. You know, a little murder for hire never hurt anyone in this economy. Come on. So it's all about bringing her sort of feminine, pseudo youthful take to this to this profession. I would love to do that again. It was a blast. Yeah.
Sounds great. It sounds like some things coming up then for the fans to watch out for.
Yeah, I hope so.
So yeah, thank you again very much for your time.
Thank you so much. It was so fun chatting with you both, and I really appreciate how much time you had put into watching the episode and coming up with the questions. That means a lot. So thank you.